you have a big district with lots of other issues. In fact, you represent your neighbor island district very well when it comes to trying to do the best that you can for them.
Thank you. Well, I do have I have actually quite a few condominiums along the west coast, you know, the Kohala coast, north of Kona Airport. There's many condominiums, and on another subject that you and I have talked about, there's planned community associations. Different from condominium associations, which I think we need to take a look at and start building on some of what I would consider kind of common sense way of managing associations where there's board of directors that truly impact the landowner. In planned community associations, the board makes a lot of decisions on what affects homeowners, and just like condominiums.
Right, and I think at least there should be better disclosure. I think that from my knowledge, and my knowledge is much more limited than yours on those situations, but at the very least, there ought to be, it's like when I first started, you know, people should have minutes of the meetings. They should be able to attend and know fairly quickly what decisions are being made by those bodies. And but I would be happy to come and visit your, it's always wonderful going to the neighbor islands, so I'll even pay my own way if you invite me over there, and we'll
show you these.
Happy to do that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Well, I'm going to shift a little bit the conversation, and I mean, you've been here lobbying, you know, talking with people, coming up with some ideas, bringing them to the legislature believing this seems reasonable, moving some of these ideas into regulation, and I think for the people that are listening to this, you know, you've actually been in the hallways, you've worked with different governors, senators, congressmen, and you know, so you kind of been in the trenches, you know, working on the issues, and it'd be kind of fun, I think, to hear from you a little bit about what that experience has been like, and you know, what would you say to people that are passionate? I mean, obviously something hooked you. I don't know why, but something hooked you and you got passionate about condominiums. But there's people out there that get hooked and get passionate about their own issues. And, you know, how do they move things through this big body and develop that rapport? I mean, do you have any you can share that?
First, the good news.
Yes.
Hawaii has the most open process of any state in the United States. There are states in which you cannot enter the state capitol without an appointment. Here, people walk in, they go up the elevator, they go into a legislator's office, and yeah, they might have to wait a while, or they might have to come back, but at least they have access to legislators in a way that no other state has. And I come from a kind of a friendly state. Originally, I've been here 45 years, but originally I'm from Massachusetts, and they're noted for being pretty open, but I can't tell you it's not as open as the situation is here. Second of all, through the work of the legislature, and I have to congratulate Senator Leslie Hara for his work back more than a decade now on public access. You know, we have the public access room where you can get so much help. So I would suggest that anybody, actually people who are in high school, who are in college, should come up here and go to the public access room. They will be surprised at how much information they can get. And then a lot of the times after that, they can work from their home and get a lot of information about what goes on here. I also say that I have been impressed over the years at how many really dedicated public servants. We have people up here who work full-time at the legislature. They don't have a part-time job. They spend all of their time. But even those who have another job during the months that the legislature is not in session, they're still doing a lot of their legislative work during those months. So, you know, as you know, I am a former chairman of the Democratic Party, and I know, have seen the best and the worst. I've seen legislators who maybe don't do all that they should for their communities and for the state. But by and large, it's a very impressive group of people here. And you know, there's discussion all the time about term limits. I got to tell you that the turnover is really rather rapid when you think about it, because you want people up here who have a history of what has been done in the last decade or the last 2 decades. So I have, when I was chairman, there were people I had to go into their office and counsel them about some of their actions. But I am very impressed by the quality of people who are in office, both in the Senate and in the House. So from an insider's view, by the way, I would suggest anybody who wants to know more about the process, there's a number of good books, but I would recommend Ben's latest book because he tells it like it is. The good,
really?
the bad, and the ugly. And so if somebody, and it's an easy read, it's not highfalutin, you know, Ben, pretty down-to-earth kind of guy.
And for those of you, it's Ben Cayetano.
Yeah, I should say, Governor Cayetano. But his book, the title of his book is Ben because everybody knew him as Ben.
Yeah.
And it's a very good book. I haven't read all of it myself, but I've read a good bit of it. And so people who want to know, but I would like to see more young people coming up here. The good thing about it is the legislature has offered the opportunity for high school and younger kids to come up here. In fact, I was testifying a couple of weeks ago on a bill, and there was a group that came in from one of the high schools, and I used it as a kind of opportune moment to kind of help educate them to what goes on up here. So I would say that I'm very impressed by it. And thank you for...
I want to know more about your tenacity. I mean, you spent all those years here, but more than that, you've sat a lot of hours sitting on benches.
Yeah.
So, you know, kind of tell us, I think it'd be interesting to kind of tell us one of those stories where, you know, you worked hours, you stood out in hallways, you caught people between meetings, conference, you're standing there. I mean, there's a real commitment, a lot of time on an advocate's part. Tell us one of those stories.
Well, I'd like to tell you about maybe the story of Aquan McElrath, who is the person who recently died, you know, and a real heroine for Hawaii, always stood up for working people and for regular people. And she would sit on the floor with all the bills and go through them, and she would be in testifying on, you know, a number of bills on any given day, and that's the standard. She represented the standard. And when I first got involved in the legislature, there was a fellow named Dave Thompson from ILWU, and he would get up there, he would have the audience almost in tears. He would talk about education for working families and working children, and wow, you know, and I think he impressed me as much as anything into getting myself involved. And so I look at the heroes and the heroines of the past who have come up here, and you know, I think that there's a lot of respect shown by the legislators for people who do come up here, and I like that. I think that the people, you know, some people come up here as lobbyists and they're being paid, but and that's okay too. You know, they're representing maybe the dentist or some group or other, but the ones I really respect the most are these people who come up from environmental groups, you know, and worker groups, and you know, that's what makes the system work. That's what makes democracy work.
I got to tell you, when you talk about it, you lit up, and you just, it's very, it's exciting, isn't it?
Well, I started my first, I guess, I was fortunate to get to the White House with John F. Kennedy. And that was inspiring. My wife and I were the first married couple accepted in the Peace Corps back in the 60s, 61. And so I had, you know, I saw this wonderful president who really, you know, the new frontier, and of course, we all lived through his assassination. Not you, you're too young, but
Right.
but for us, you know, we lost some great leaders at that time, including, of course, Bobby Kennedy and Martin Luther King Jr. But all those people, the early '60s was different from the late '60s. The early '60s were a very inspiring time.
Well, I'm going to have to wrap this up, I know. But you know, the name of my show is Now What? So I'm going to, now what? For you.
Well,
what's next for you?
Well, I think that, one, we want to get through this legislative session. We have two good bills that we're working on here, and so far they've survived. That's another thing, too. You must never give up, never give up, never give up, because sometimes the bill goes down one year, but you come back the next year, and you get help that way. There's been some really good legislators that have worked here. And you know, some of them, like Maisie, is no longer in the House, but there she is up in Congress. You know, who knows? You may be 2nd District Congresswoman someday. It could happen, and it's inspiring to see some of the leaders who have gone through here in the past.
Yes, but I want to talk about you real quick. Got to wrap this up.
Okay.
Now what for you?
Well, I promised my wife that this would be the last time, the last session, because I'm almost 72, and it's time for younger people to get involved. But I will help them. If they come to me and they have a condo problem, or if you want to call me, I will come and I will help. You can be sure
So we
of
got
that.
the Condo Man with us today.
Thank you so much.
You really are. You're amazing, and I
Thank you.
appreciate all that you've done on this very important issue for homeowners.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Aloha.